Sofia Zhukova was born in 1939 in the village of Zvyagina, Nizhny Novgorod region. She did not receive a proper education and worked almost all her life as a laborer. Sofia had a lot of grief. Several of her children died very early. In time, she moved to Khabarovsk, Berezovka district, settled in an apartment building on the second floor. Until her retirement, the woman worked as a laborer in meat processing. Sturdy, strong beyond her years, Zhukova had a creaky, husky voice, for which the residents of Berezovka nicknamed her Sonia Sipata. There Sofia married and gave birth to 2 sons. Rumor has it that both boys went out to work in law enforcement. The quiet pensioner lived with her family on the outskirts of town for many years, attracting no attention until Sofya's husband passed away in 2005. Whether the man was a deterrent or whether his passing had shaken the woman's psyche so badly is unknown. She became grumpy and constantly got into altercations, threatening people with death, but no one took her madness seriously. And for good reason. Acquaintances noted the woman's cold-bloodedness, insensitivity to other people's pain and dislike of pets. Also, Zhukova attributed to a tendency to alcoholism, although other neighbors are not so categorical in statements. They say that the old woman looked after herself, every day went for a walk in the yard. But in 2005, the woman committed her first crime. On December 14, 2005, a girl named Nastya Alexenko was returning from school with her friend. The girls reached Nastya's house, said goodbye and left. Nastya had to go up to the second floor to her grandparents, with whom she lived during the school days, but they never waited for her. At 13:30, the grandfather sounded the alarm because the granddaughter did not appear at home. Calling a friend and the girl, the grandfather found out that she last saw Nastya when she said goodbye, and together with her in the entryway came an elderly neighbor, 66-year-old Sofia Zhukova. The pensioner once scolded her and Nastya because of the noise in the entrance and threatened, "I'll blow your hands and heads off." The family of the missing girl appealed to the police. Escape was immediately noted. She had good relations with her relatives. The girl was adored and never strictly punished. Looked for Nastya Alexenko, all of Berezovka and the police and volunteers. Several days of searching and the results did not give, and soon the investigators called Sofia Zhukova for questioning. The pensioner knew Nastya quite well. The girl allegedly came to visit her when her husband was still alive. Together they drank tea, and the schoolgirl asked not to tell her parents about her visits, so that she would not be scolded. The old woman added that after her husband's death, the girl had never visited her. And on the day of her disappearance, Nastya was walking down the stairs ahead of her. But some girls called her, and she ran out into the street. Since then, the woman had not seen her. The story seemed quite convincing, but the relatives of the missing girl became suspicious. Anastasia's grandmother knew perfectly well that she had never visited Sofia Zhukova and could not understand why her neighbor would lie about it after the child went missing. "My phone number was on the missing persons report," the girl's mother said. "There were a lot of calls. Someone said they had seen a similar child. I drove around and verified the information, but one call was from a row. I remembered the voice, very distinctive. A woman called, but I didn't recognize her. She said her daughter was alive and she was fine. I got worried and went to the police. It was determined that the call was made from our module and that all staff could have access to the phone. About 2 weeks later, at the very end of December 2005, the mystery of Anastasia Alexenko's disappearance was solved. On the evening of December 14th, the day of Nastya's disappearance, one of her neighbors went out for a walk with her dogs. The pets led the mistress around the corner of the building, where she saw pieces of fresh meat lying under the balconies. The woman decided that there were dog hunters in the neighborhood, and the meat was poisoned and took the dogs another way. Upon returning home, the woman told her mother about the strange findings and called the operatives. The policeman arrived at the house and found only purple stains in the remains of bones. The policeman did not pay much attention to them and left. However, law enforcement officers had to return to the topic of meat on the streets in Berezovka very soon. On December 27th, a resident of Khabarovsk stopped near a dump in the area of Berezovka. The driver got out of the car and saw a slightly snow-covered black bag with meat and decided to take it home for his dog. But later the man realized that he had brought something terrible. The bag contained remains. The shocked man hurriedly reported the terrible find to the police and told in detail where and how he found the package. The man's story was confirmed by his brother and wife. Mother Nastya Alexyenko was invited to the identification. What the woman had to go through remains only to guess. The fragments really belonged to her daughter. Soon, the whole of Khabarovsk knew about the brutal crime, but the culprit could not be found. Gradually, the life of Berezovka returned to its usual course, and the residents of the village began to move away from the terrible events of December 2005. In March 2013, a distant relative, pensioner Anastasia Mikiva, 77, came to visit Sofia Zhukova. The woman sold her apartment in Khabarovsk, for which she received 3 million rubles, and asked to stay with Zhukova for a few weeks, after which she planned to move to Moscow and live with her daughter. But after the move, communication with her broke down. The pensioner's daughter and niece reported her missing. Investigators promptly reconstructed the picture of the disappearance. On March 9, 2013, when the woman stopped contacting her relatives, the letter carrier came to Sofia Zhukova's apartment and issued a pension to her and Anastasia Mikiva. The operatives decided to question Sofia Zhukova, and the latter said that her guest, having received her pension, suddenly packed her bags and said that she was leaving to live with relatives in Primorye. Surprised Zhukova allegedly tried to prevent Mikiva and snatched the bag with documents out of her hands, but she left anyway. According to the landlady, through the window she saw Anastasia get into a black car, which left in an unknown direction. This story alerted the police because they noticed small bloodstains on the wallpaper and the radiator. But Sofia Zhukova had an answer to that too. With my relative, we quarreled because of her sudden departure. Her blood pressure went up and she got a nosebleed. Anastasia gesticulated vigorously and splashed her around the apartment. The version seemed to the operatives not too convincing. Also, Mikiva's daughter said that they have no relatives in Primorye. The investigators had to find the postmistress from Berezovka and interview her. She said that when she brought Sofia Zhukova's pension again a month later, the woman told her that her relative was missing. But the letter carrier did not believe her story that Mikiva had gotten into a black car and left. After all, the windows of Zhukova's apartment did not face the roadway, but the courtyard where no car can pass. Attentive neighbors of the grumpy pensioner said that after the disappearance of her relative, Zhukova began to carry her clothes and fragments of furniture to the garbage dump, and neighbors saw purple stains near the garbage cans. In the village crawled, then fading, then flaring up after another terrible find. Rumors of a maniac are not simple about the cannibal. Years passed, the second crime was forgotten, and the guilty person was not punished. Another deprivation of life shook Berezovka in January 2019. This time the victim was 62-year-old janitor Vasily Shlyaktych, originally from Ukraine. His cohabitant kicked the man out of the house, and Vasily asked to live with his acquaintance for a rent of 10,000 rubles for a while. True to the great regret of the man she turned out to be, Sofia Zhukova, the pensioner sweetly agreed to shelter him. And on January 28, the man went missing. The disappearance was discovered when the janitor did not show up for work for several days. And this time the police quickly identified a suspect. Neighbors living on the first floor below Sofia Zhukova's apartment said that around 2 a.m. on January 29th, they woke up to muffled blows coming from the apartment above. According to neighbors, Zhukova often made repairs, whitewashing new wallpaper. They used to associate the strange noises at night with the renovation. But this time they revised their opinion. The blows were heavy, as if they were hitting something like an axe, and they were accompanied by men's moans, followed by even louder blows. After a while, Zhukova could be heard mopping the floor. The man even wanted to go to the troublesome neighbor and make a remark about the noise in the middle of the night, but his wife talked him out of it, which the man was later very glad about. And if I had gone there when she was chopping her victim, she could have hit me with an axe too. I would be lying there now. It's good that my wife didn't let me go, the frightened man said. In the morning, the same neighbors met a pensioner who was walking through the yard towards the garbage cans with a tightly packed bag. That same evening in the apartment from above again sounded muffled blows, as if something was being chopped. A day later, 2 schoolgirls found remains near the heating duct. Investigators had to quickly compare the disappearance of Vasily Shlyaktych, the story of neighbors, and the discovery. The former cohabitant of the janitor identified the deceased, and Sofia Zhukova was detained. It should be noted that the woman was physically very strong. so much so that she could fight back 5 police officers during the arrest. What is there to be surprised about? Already at retirement age, during the renovation, the woman herself took out of her apartment cast-iron central heating batteries. The search of the apartment began. The investigators found many fragments of blood, including on the axe blade and saws. The pensioner denied her guilt in every possible way and stated that she did not know Shliaktich, only saw him drinking in public a few days ago. The noise came from the fact that the pensioner could not sleep and chopped bones for borscht with an axe, and the blood was left by her relative Anastasia Mikiva, who had left 7 years ago, the one who had gone missing. This time the stories did not help Zhukova to stay free. She was sent to the pre-trial detention center on suspicion of taking Vasili's life. After a few weeks in custody, the old woman offered her version of what happened at her home on the night of January 29. According to her story, the night before, Vasily came to her house with another man and asked to have tea. She kindly invited them in, after which the men abused her. Shliaktich's acquaintance ran away, and she tried to kick the janitor out, but he fought back, so she hit him with an axe. While the woman was testifying, the investigation did not stop for a minute, and law enforcers realized that the crimes committed in Berezovka could be connected, because Sofia Zhukova's name appeared in all of them. Witnesses went through additional interviews on all past crimes, and the suspect woman's apartment was searched more thoroughly, during which other traces of blood were found under the linoleum. An expert examination showed that it belonged to the very same distant relative, who had allegedly left for Primori. Meanwhile, the suspect did not like it in the pre-trial detention center. In February, she was placed in a cell where there were already 2 female detainees. At first, Zhukova tried to convince them that they wanted to hang on her the deprivation of life of the janitor, but soon having separated with the women, the pensioner revealed herself and told the women how she took the lives of Vasily and Anastasia Mikiva, throwing away the remains in pieces. But the most terrible confession was the story about the girl Nastya Alexenko. The woman confessed that she threw the remains from the balcony to be scattered by dogs. Cellmates immediately told about it to the investigators, and soon the pensioner herself admitted guilt, in detail narrating the circumstances and reasons for each crime. Everything was shown, from how the victims were hit to where the parts were thrown. However, a few months later she tried to retract her words, claiming that she had signed the confession under duress. But by that time, investigators had gathered enough evidence to state with certainty that Zhukova was guilty in all 3 cases. During the trial, the bloodthirsty grandmother constantly laughed at the mother of her first victim, Anastasia Alexenko. We then searched the entire neighborhood, all the basements, examined every meter of the city, and it turned out that the answer was very close behind the next door. Zhukova calmly looked me in the eye. No one could even think of it then. In all these 15 years, I never knew a day of peace. Initially, she said that she fought with her because of loud conversations in the entrance, and then gave a testimony where she told how she dragged her daughter into her apartment by the scruff of the neck. She told how she hit her on the head when she stood with her back to her, and all other terrible details were told by Natalia Alexenko, Nastya's mother. Because of the experience, including during the trial, the woman began to have health problems. Adelia Vergazova, a senior investigator of the Department for Investigation of Especially Important Cases of the Investigative Department of the Investigative Committee of Russia for Khabarovsk Krai, was investigating the deprivation of Shliaktich's life and said that Sofia was not detained earlier because at the time of the first 2 crimes, there was no reason to believe that she was involved in them. But with the appearance of new evidence and taking into account the confession of the pensioner herself to the authorities, there is no doubt about her involvement in these tragedies. The reasons for the reprisals against Mikhaeva and Shliaktich were domestic quarrels, and against Nastya, quarrels that took place earlier because of noise. The girl was disturbing the old woman with her running around and playing with her friends. After her criminal acts, the pensioner packed the remains in bags and threw them away, either in garbage cans near the house or in different corners of Berezovka. The forensic psychologist of psychiatric examination recognized the pensioner as sane, and according to the conclusion of experts, she did it all consciously. In general, the reasons for the tragedies were insignificant, which showed the irascible character of the woman. The woman was not involved in other crimes besides these 3. as the investigators later assured. During the trial, the grandmother often insulted witnesses and laughed, in her voice at what was happening, emphasizing that she did not care about the feelings of others and that she had no remorse for what she had done. She often interrupted the participants of the trial with shouts of "don't lie" and made snide remarks about them. She loudly ordered the common-law wife of the janitor, Vasily Shlyakhtych, to shut her mouth. During the trial, when Natalia was talking about the deceased, Zhukova's mood changed dramatically for the better. First she smiled and then she laughed out loud. When it got too loud, she covered her mouth with the palm of her hand. Vasily's common-law wife said that he came from Ukraine, was a responsive, kind and hard-working man. With one drawback, he liked to drink. Drinking in January 2019 was the cause of a spat, after which Natalia chased him out of the house. I told him then, "You drink, then there can be nothing in common between you and me. If you quit, I'll come after you." That's when he started renting a room from Zhukova. A week later, he came to Natalia's house to pick up his things and told her that he was renting a room from his grandmother, who swears. He said that I would live at her place until the end of January and leave. I was getting stressed there. I asked him at the time who was stressing him out. Vasya, children, grandchildren, he didn't say. But eventually I realized that he was talking about this one person. Vasily, according to his common-law wife, wanted to go to Ukraine and was saving money. He was going to visit Natalia after his January paycheck. But instead he disappeared and his phone was turned off. Zhukova suggested that Shlyakhtych refused his wife in intimacy, and then suggested that she should go to all four sides. Sofia Zhukova fell ill with COVID-19 in 2020. Under escort, she was taken to Khabarovsk City Hospital number 10, where the woman died on December 29th at the age of 81 from complications caused by a coronavirus infection. Sofia Zhukova, the oldest and most cold-blooded serial criminal in the history of Russia and the USSR, did not wait for the verdict for a year while the trial was going on. The pensioner from Berezovka gained world fame without exaggeration. January 19, 2021. Khabarovsk court put an end to the story of serial criminal Sofya Ivanovna. She was recognized guilty posthumously. As for her sons, the men wanted to have as little in common with their mother as possible, and only one of them appeared at the trial. The court found the defendant guilty of a triple episode of deprivation of life, including a minor. Part 2. Article 105 of the Criminal Code of the Russian Federation. Serial crimes are not often found in the practice of law enforcement agencies. As a rule, crimes of this kind are committed by men. History knows only a few female maniacs, but in yards and kitchens will be muffled. Voices will tell a terrible story about Sonia Zapata, claiming that she has 3 ruined lives on her conscience. They will say that this oldest serial criminal in the world lived not somewhere in the United States, but in the small village of Berezovka near Khabarovsk.